Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Dear Dr. Courtney. Today, we are going to be talking about emotion regulation. Okay. So I hope y'all are feeling okay at this point in your week and in your day. And I'm so glad that you're here to tune in for another psychosocial, sometimes spiritual lesson about life, right? So, emotion regulation. Y'all know if you've watched my other episodes, you know that I love a good definition, right? So, Dr. Courtney's definition of emotion regulation is when you have a feeling that comes on you that you experience, right? Emotion regulation says that I may not get to choose the emotion that I'm feeling. However, I do get to choose what it makes me say, what it makes me do, how it makes me do it, and how it makes me say it. Okay? So, the idea of emotion regulation is that when a feeling rises on the inside, it does not have the final say. It does not have total authority over you in how you show up in the world in that moment. Emotion regulation is a skill set, okay? It's a social skill set. And it's something I think of skill sets like muscles, and you have to get practice. You have to get reps, repetitions, do it over and over and over and over in order to build strength. So, in order to build strength and your ability to emotionally regulate yourself, you have to practice the skill set. What does this look like? When you are driving in traffic, somebody cuts you off, your impulse lunges forward to say, you. If that's your reaction, I don't know. If you have road rage or something, okay? Know that with emotion regulation, when that impulse lurches up in your chest, okay? Emotion regulation will say, I acknowledge the feeling. I know I want to impulsively, initially, this is my response. I can see myself behaving this way. However, I'm going to choose how I channel, how I express that emotion. Okay? So, an alternative to rolling down your window and screaming at the person that cut you off, you can take a step back, take a deep breath. Okay? You can also do something that I absolutely love to do. I'm a huge advocate for is voice journaling. When you feel a surge of emotion, it needs to be expressed. What that means is it needs somewhere to go. So voice journaling is super convenient because what it essentially means is instead of writing how you feel and writing what you think, you're verbalizing that. So if you're driving in the car and this person just cuts you off, you can just say to yourself whatever thoughts and feelings may be coming to you about what you felt when that person cut you off. It may even lead you into talking about your day or your life and maybe why that really irritated you, okay? Once you have gotten to the end of your journaling, whether it is verbal or you do it later in a written form, but in that moment, you need something to release that frustration onto and into so that it's not stored on the inside. Verbal journaling can be very helpful. 9 times out of 10, you will feel less tension on the inside, less on edge, and less needing to explode, to project, to express that frustration, that feeling, that anger onto whoever offended you. Okay? So, when you think about emotion regulation, the whole idea behind it is to acknowledge the emotion and give yourself a pause. Some people say, take a beat, right? And decide how you are going to express that emotion. Again, do not let the emotion hop in the driver's seat and control your life, because you know what's going to happen if you do that. You're going to crash out, okay? You're going to say things, you're going to do things that perhaps you wouldn't have done if you were in a neutral emotional state. The reason why this happens when we're experiencing a heightened emotional state, whether it's a good heightened emotional state, whether it's a negative, I would say positive or negative emotional state, is that when we are feeling a surge of emotions, the prefrontal cortex, which is the decision-making logistics center, the executive functioning command center in our brain, its functioning is severely diminished. What we have left to inform our actions, our behaviors, our decisions is our subconscious mind and our emotions. If you follow your impulse when you're feeling an emotional surge, you're probably going to get what feels like an emotional vomit, just all over everybody, sometimes over yourself. Okay? And so what ends up happening is you experience the yuck of the moment, whatever the offense was, and then the yuck of your behavior afterwards, the aftermath that your behavior created. Okay? So I want to talk to you about emotion regulation, where it can become, there's two sides to the continuum, right? Becoming so healed, becoming so mature, and so committed to not letting your emotions get the best of you, to the point that you actually you swing all the way to the opposite side of the continuum, which is withdrawal, checking out, numbing out, no response at all. Okay? And that's not good either. That can be very, very unhealthy. Just like crashing out, spazzing out can be very unhealthy when you feel a strong emotion. And I'm going to tell you why. I'll use myself as an example. When I was younger, I used to have a very sharp tongue, okay? Especially in romantic relationships. I could slice a man up with my words, even without cursing, okay? This is an adaptation that had developed because I was in an unhealthy relationship at a very young age, romantic relationship, and I learned how to do battle in return, in response to somebody harming me, okay? This way of dealing with my emotions when I was offended became my norm. When I experienced a healthy relationship context for the first time, I think I was maybe 22. It was with a guy who was older than me, closer to 30. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need my sword in every romantic context. Each time I felt hurt, each time I felt offended by a man. Okay? You only need a weapon if the other party has a weapon. Okay? So I do want to add that caveat that something that once was an adaptation, learning how to do battle, verbal battle, you don't want to throw it away. You want to learn to be able to pick and choose when you draw your sword. Okay? It is when it is not contextually appropriate, when you have a sword and nobody else has a sword on the other side, it's just a conversation, it becomes a maladaptation. That means that something that was functional and appropriate is now inappropriate and dysfunctional in that given context. Okay? So, from that relationship experience, and then I went to school to become a therapist, I made a commitment to myself to unlearn that adaptation of wielding my sword all willy-nilly with no control as soon as I felt hurt or offended or just any need to protect myself, especially in the context of a dating or romantic sense. I have intentionally worked to sharpen my emotion regulation skill set so much to the point that I can feel the offense, I can feel the frustration, and I can totally disregard acting on it at all. Okay? I recently realized, because I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly being an observer of myself, I'm constantly evolving, growing, maturing in all ways that I am talking to my clients, I'm talking to you about as well, right? I recently realized that completely disregarding an offense, it can send the wrong message, especially to people who are newer to you and they don't know that you have no problem speaking up for yourself, setting boundaries, or advocating for yourself, right? And I realized my silence had inadvertently gave the message that I was giving permission for this person to offend me in this way. And I'll be honest with you, the reason why I chose silence is because, one, I have the self-control now. I have these emotion regulation skill to choose to indulge in the emotion or not. So to address how I'm feeling within myself and within that person, right? So because of the season of life that I'm in right now, because of where I am in my healing journey, where I'm fiercely protective over my peace, and because of how I'm budgeting my energy emotionally, physically, in all the ways, I chose silence. And I chose to allocate my energy in spaces that matter the most. But as a therapist, as a person that studies humanity, I picked up on a pattern. I have a gift of pattern recognition, and it doesn't take long, but I do give it due time so I can make sure I'm not jumping to a conclusion. And I realized that over time, this behavior was continuing, this offense that was happening towards me. And I realized, I said, sometimes you can heal so much, you can mature so much, you can become so peaceful that in the wrong hands, it can be exploited. It can be taken advantage of, And you can just be downright disrespected because you don't flare up in aggression when somebody offends you. Okay? So the lesson that I learned for myself is that while I had purpose and intention of choosing to dismiss the offense instead of addressing it, my silence was teaching this person that that type of behavior was acceptable to me. I gave permission to it. And unfortunately, through our action or inaction, we are always teaching people how to treat us. So saying all this to say is it's important, okay, to yes, build the self-regulation muscle to the point that your emotions cannot hop in the driver's seat of who you are and urge you and make you say something and do something. However, the middle ground that I have recently learned for myself, and now I'm teaching you and I'll be teaching my clients, is that once you realize I can choose what to say and what to do, the next step is that you must do something. You must say something, especially if you want to have a continuing relationship with that person and you don't want to continue to experience the offense. Okay? There's a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that said, "There comes a time where your silence is agreement to abuse." I may be quoting that a little bit off, but I recall that quote that I read before. Okay? So don't co-sign somebody abusing you or mistreating you because of your silence. Okay? And I will say to you that sometimes you will speak up for yourself. You will advocate for yourself. It doesn't mean that the person is going to change their ways or stop their behavior. Okay? However, it does increase the possibility that your choice to regulate your emotions in a mature and healthy way could create a teaching opportunity in that relationship. And if that person respects you or values you or values the relationship, they will say, "Oh, maybe I wasn't aware of that. That wasn't my intention. I don't want to continue to injure our relationship. Moving forward, I'm going to change my behavior." But know that that is not always the outcome when you advocate for yourself. So the next level of advocating for yourself in that situation is to remove yourself from that person's presence, that relationship, that scenario altogether as a behavioral statement of self-respect. Okay? So I know that we're kind of shifting into a conversation about boundaries now. I noticed that. And we'll go into that conversation in another video. So I'm going to pause here for today. I hope today's conversation mattered to you. I'm imagining if you made it this far in the video, it did. I hope that it gave you a sense of more information, but also empowerment in your day-to-day experiences and relationships. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video for our next topic. Bye.